And I don't mind if you ask me questions, but I'll stop every few minutes and you can ask me any questions you'd like to. First, I thought I'd tell you what it was like to be at home. At home, it was kind of like when the power goes out at your house during a blizzard and you have no TV, because we didn't have a TV. TV didn't come into my life until probably I was about 8 years old. And the TVs were very small. They were about yay big. They were black and white, and they called them snowy. They were very hazy. You had a hard time to see it. And my neighbor was the one who had the first TV that I remember, and all the neighbors would go on Tuesday night to watch a special show. And it was called Milton Berle, and he was a comedian. And we would go over to a house, and there'd probably be 8 or 10 people all sitting around this little TV. And I remember sitting on the floor and watching this funny show. And that's what it was like. There was no, the TVs were small, and certainly there was no remote control. Later on, when TVs got very popular, they didn't come on until, the stations didn't start until probably 4:30 in the afternoon. If you put on the television during the day, there'd be nothing on. It would be just this they called it a test pattern. It would be a design on the screen to let you know the TV was working, but there were no programs on. They came on about 4:30 in the afternoon. There were maybe, I don't remember, more than 4 channels. That was it. There was news and a few contestant show like Queen for a Day and these different programs they would have. And the news and a show probably about 8 o'clock. By 10:30, 11 o'clock, the TV went off. So it was a very short time the TV was on, not long, not 24/7 like you're accustomed to. And if you wanted to change the channel, you had to get up, go to the TV, and turn the knob. So if there was nothing, I'm sure you would think you were really doing hard work if you had to get up now and change the channel every time you wanted to see what was on TV. So that's what we grew up in. We didn't know that we didn't have things. I don't want you to think that we weren't happy or we went moping around going, oh my God, we don't have this, we don't have that. We didn't know any different. When you're up here giving this lecture, when you get to be 72 years old and you're up here talking to some kids about what it was like, you'll be telling them about some things that are invented in your lifetime. And you can tell them some things. But this was what my little picture was of what my home life and my childhood was like. When I went to school, my first grade teacher, we didn't have public kindergarten, by the way. There was no public kindergarten. My first grade teacher it was the first year that women were allowed to be married and teach. Before that, if you got married, you had to leave teaching. You couldn't be married and teach about the same time. I guess they wanted you to spend every waking moment thinking about your job, but you had to leave. So it was a big deal to have Mrs. Lynch, because no one else had Mrs. anything, because teachers were not allowed to be married. I went to a school that had grades 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the same school. So we knew everybody in the building. So we started out in first grade, and then you went through. You knew all the people, and and the teachers knew you, and you knew them. They were probably 17 in my class. I had an old picture, and that's what I counted. There were 17 classmates, and we were very, very friendly because we were the only companions we had were the neighborhood kids. And the nice thing is that I meet with 8 of them. We get together and we have lunch about every 2 months. We go out and have lunch together. And it's the funniest thing when we get together, because we have memories that no one else knows about except us. And it's a very special thing. So if you have a special friend, you be sure that you keep in touch with them all your life, because you will share memories and you will have stories to tell each other and laughs, and you'll have a special thing in your life. So if you have a great friend, even as you move on through high school and graduate and get out into the world, you make sure you keep in touch with those people, because they're an important part of your life. So I'll tell you, let's see. Well, now that I'm at the school, the girls wore dresses. We never ever would have worn pants or shorts or capris or whatever. Girls always wore dresses or skirts and blouses. Boys would have worn long pants, not shorts. They would, it just wasn't allowed. That wasn't the proper dress. Teachers would not. Teachers would always be dressed in a dress. And I remember teaching at Merrill School when teachers were finally allowed to wear pants, and it was allowed to be only a pantsuit. It had to match. The top and the bottom had to match, and certainly not jeans or capris or anything. And I remember as a teacher there walking into the building the first time I had on a pantsuit and going, "Woo, look at me, I'm in school and I have pants on." It was like a big thing that we could finally do that. And now you're there sitting in shorts and comfortable things. So things have certainly changed a long time along the way. So going back to what my home was like without electricity. We had electricity, by the way. I just want you to think of what it was like during a blizzard when you don't have any power. Because when I grew up without a microwave, your mother had to cook everything. And you cooked it from scratch. You didn't go down to Market Basket and buy a nice chicken already roasted in a container and bring it home and have lunch. If you wanted chicken, guess what? We had a man who had a farm, and he would come to the house with a chicken, a dead chicken with the feathers and the feet and everything else, and we had to clean the chicken. I can remember. I probably still could do it if I had to. So I can remember my mom and my grandmother would be downstairs and they would be plucking the chicken. You had to dunk them in hot water, pull the feathers out, and clean it. And so that's how we grew up. We didn't go to the store and buy one already cooked. Certainly there was no dishwasher. How do you think we washed the dishes? What did we do?
Put your dishes in like a pail and filled it up with water and then just wash them by scratch.
Yep. Wash them in the sink. He said fill a pail with water, wash them in the sink. Kind of like when you're camping. So you would have washed your dishes that way. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yeah?
My camper has a sink, so...
Well, you have a sink, but not a dishwasher.
Oh, no.
So, but you know.
My family usually uses a sink, not a dishwasher.
You probably have paper plates and throw them away, right?
Well, we usually only use dishwasher if it's like a big, like friends are over.
That's right. Yep. Uh-huh.
How much was gas?
Gas was really, really cheap. I remember my dad going to get gas and would get $1 worth. You'd drive up and you'd say, he would say $1 worth because it was probably like 20 cents. Yeah, it was very, very cheap because you could fill up a car for $1 or pretty close. Yeah, it was not certainly, that's a very good question. It's a very good question. Bread was probably about 20 cents a loaf, 25 cents a loaf, but on the other hand, people were not making the amount of money that we had today. The money was different. So now I think the minimum wage is somewhere around $8 an hour. If you work at a store or something, you get $8 is the least amount of money that they can pay you. But when I was my first job, I earned $1 an hour, and that was a lot to get $1 an hour. So when I was younger, it was probably 75 cents or 50 cents an hour, because most of the people I knew worked in factories. We had a lot of factories back then. Around this area, we manufactured a lot of things. So there were a lot of jobs for people, because when they got out of high school, they could go and work in the factories. We made a lot of Taunton. I grew up in Taunton, by the way. We made a lot of metal, manufacturing copper and utensils and Redenbatten silver, a lot of silverware. We had a rubber factory. We did a lot of manufacturing of clothing. So we had a lot of places for people to work. And now we don't. We don't have any of those because all the things we make are made in another country, mostly China, in Korea and Japan and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. That's where our goods are made now. Does anyone else have a question? Yep.
What was soda like back then?
Excuse me?
What was soda like?
Soda?
Did you guys have any drinks or anything?
Yeah, the soda was soda, but we used to have a soda man. And he came to the house And don't forget, it was only one car in the house, and that my father took that to work. So there were a lot of people who delivered goods to your house, mainly because it was convenient, and that's the way they could sell it. So that soda man would bring the soda to the house in a case, and it would be big glass bottles. And it was probably $1 a case, something like that. And you kept the case and you had the soda. They weren't the little cans, no cans of soda.
Yeah, they were like bottles.
Yeah, you had to open them with a can opener. And you would tell them, I want 2 orange, 2 ginger ale, whatever they had. You tell them which kind of flavors. And then 2 weeks later, he'd come back and take the empty case full of the soda bottles, because you had to wash them out and put them back in the case. And he would bring you another case and take the empties away. So we didn't throw stuff away. We didn't have cans of soda, just bottles. Soda was all the same flavors that we have now, though, the same things. Same kinds of things. Anyone else have a question before I go on? No? Okay. Just think about what you want to ask, and you can ask me whatever. Let me see. The stores were specialty stores, I guess I have to say. We certainly had no Walmart, no malls. If you wanted to go buy shoes, you went to a shoe store. If you wanted to buy children's clothes, you went to a store that sold only children's clothes. If you wanted to buy TVs or appliances, you went to that kind of store. And stores closed at 5 o'clock at night. You could not go shopping at night. And they were only open one night a week, which was Friday. And that was a big deal because people would walk, we used to call it downtown. And we would walk downtown to the center of Taunton, where I grew up, and you'd walk through the stores and you'd see everybody else you knew. You saw everybody from town and you talked to them. And it was a big event to socialize with people that you knew, especially at Christmas time. That was really fun to see people buying all their presents. And you didn't have a store like Walmart. You could not go in and buy every single thing you wanted in one place. You had to walk up and down the street and buy different things. And 9 out of 10, you walked home. We would walk downtown. It was probably a 15, 20-minute walk. And then you did your shopping, and then you went back home. I remember my mother doing that. If she needed groceries during the week, she would walk to the grocery store, and she could only buy whatever she could carry. So you couldn't buy a whole big carload of stuff because she could just carry so much in weight. So we would carry the stuff home and put it away, and that's what she needed groceries. That's what you did. And we actually, in the stores, we had a salesperson that you don't know about anymore, because she would stand in front of the thing, and if she was selling books, she would say, "Can I help you today?" And you would say what you wanted, and they would help you pick out anything you wanted and find the size. Now you go in the store and you have to find everything yourself. But before, they had a sales clerk who helped you and find things. And sometimes they even wrapped them up in gift wrap for you for a birthday present. Believe that. So, and there were no credit cards. Imagine, no credit cards. If you wanted to buy something, you had to pay cash, which meant if you wanted to buy something expensive, you had a choice of 2 things. You could save up until you had it, which is something people don't know how to do today. They just buy it first and then try to pay for it later on. But you'd save up until you had the amount of money, or you could go down to the store and pick out your new refrigerator, and you would go every week and pay on it. They'd let you take it home, and you had a little book, and you had to walk down to the store, and every week you would pay a certain amount of money until your refrigerator was all paid for. So we didn't have any credit cards at all. And let me see. Telephones, might be interesting, because I think most of you have access to a phone. You have, at least somebody in your family has a cell phone, and we did not. So if you had a phone at home, we got our first phone probably, I don't know, I was probably 10. If someone was sick in the house and you needed to call the doctor, we went to a neighbor or somebody around the neighborhood had a phone, and we had to get on a list to get a phone because they didn't have the wires on the street. They didn't have the telephone wires put on the street, on all the streets all at once. So you had to wait until the wires were put on your street, and then you could get a telephone. And you had to share it with maybe 3 other families. It was called a party line. Imagine you had to wait your turn to use the phone. You'd pick it up, and if you heard somebody talking, you very politely put it down. And you had to wait until that person was finished talking before you had your turn to do it. And then you talked to an operator. She would say, "Number, please." And my number was 48784. That's all, didn't have a lot of numbers. 48784, and you would call someone and talk to them. And you were polite. You only said what you had to because you knew that there were other families who were waiting their turn to use a phone. So the first family would have 1 ring. If it rang once, it would ring once and then a little short period and then ring another time. You'd know it was for you. If it rang twice, you would know it was for another family. And if it rang 3 times, you'd know it was for the 3rd family. So once we got a telephone, then we had to wait and wait and wait until we could get what was called a private phone. And you all have private phones now, but then you didn't. You had to wait your turn to have a private phone. And I wonder if you can tell me some games that you can play when you were younger and we're going out to recess. What games could you play out at recess without using anything? Without using any ball, anything painted on the, what'd you play? Tag, yep, that's one.
Hide and seek.
Hide and seek, good for you.
Hopscotch.
Yep, we did. We had to chalk, we could draw, yep, you're right. And do you have one?
No, we took mine.
You took mine? Anyone else have another game? Yep.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, you're good. You've thought of more than I thought you could. You did good. Because most of the times the kids go outside to play at recess and they don't know what to do. They just stand there. And either they do kung fu karate chops at each other or they don't know what to do with each other because they don't know how to play any of those games that don't require anything. So we did have jump ropes, and this was my favorite thing to do when I was growing up. And I used to buy these for probably, I don't know, 19 cents. And I couldn't find them. And when I found these at the old country store, I had to pay $5 to get them. So what I paid 19 cents for was now $5. Do you know what these are? You do? You do know. All right. I'm proud of you. Have you ever played? Good for you. Good for you. Yeah, you sat on the cement and you throw the ball up in the air and bounce it. And you had to flip it and play. You played with a partner. And the first, you picked up one jack and you couldn't move any of the other ones, kind of like pickup sticks. But this was my favorite game to play growing up. So I'm glad that you still know what they are. That's really good. Have you ever heard of, let me see. Yep, hopscotch. Have you ever played giant steps? You ever played Red Rover, Red Rover? Yeah. You have? Good for you. You played red light?
I think green light's my favorite.
Yeah? Red light, green light?
I played it.
You have. Good. I'm glad. You probably had someone older show you how to do it. And that's a good thing because you're keeping the tradition. That's really good. That's a great thing. We played London Bridge. We played Little Sally Water. We played a lot of board games like Monopoly and checkers and Chinese checkers and all the board games that are still around today. We had then. Except now you play them on the computer. You don't have the real thing. You play it on the computer. And there is nothing that upsets me more when I'm watching TV and I see a computer game that shows kids how to paint. They're painting a picture, but they're using a computer. Because I was an art teacher, and I go, no, don't do that to the kids. Don't let them do it on TV. Let them on the computer. Let them paint with a real paintbrush and real paint. Because they're taking away all the pleasure from you, in a way. You know, you can do it, but you haven't really painted. You've just pushed the buttons on the screen. So I get really upset that you're being robbed of all those kinds of experiences. let's see, what else? I wrote some notes. Let me see, any other questions? No questions? Okay. How am I doing for time? I didn't even look. I think I'm probably almost at the end of my time anyway. Let me see what else I didn't. Oh, this was something you would love. When I was in school, I said that the grades 1 through 5 were in the same school. And we had a boys' side of the playground and the girls' side of the playground. The boys had to stay on this side, and there was like an imaginary line, and the girls had to stay on this side. And the girls went up the girls' staircase, and the boys went up the boys. And then we even had bubblers that were different. We didn't mingle. And then I think when we got to 4th grade, they decided that boys and girls should be able to play together. And it was like really a big deal because we'd go over, we'd stick our foot over the line to be in the boys' side, because we thought it was such a big deal to finally be able to walk on the other side of the playground, because they just thought the boys were way too rough for the girls who were standing around in dresses playing, our games. So we finally were allowed to play together. And our teacher taught us everything. We didn't have a separate gym. She would have done gym in the room, would have been just doing jumping jacks or stuff like that. We didn't have a separate gym. Maybe 4 times a year we had a supervisor who would come in and give her some suggestions. The same thing with the music. This isn't my music book, but this was the kind of music book I had with all the songs in it, and you learned from here, not from a tape recorder or whatever. So you learned to read the notes and do this. This is what I would have read going through school. Excuse me. The Bobbsey twins were very popular, and Nancy Drew mysteries were very popular. These were the books from 1st grade and kindergarten. And you started out, it would be blue book, yellow book, and everybody read from these, and it looks pretty easy, because little kids coming to school now can probably do this when they're 3 or 4. But we didn't have kindergarten, so whatever we knew, we learned from home, not from preschool or kindergarten. Mainly because my mother was home. The mothers back then didn't work. They were home. So when we went to school, we walked to school. We had no bus. We walked maybe 20 minutes from maybe here to, I don't know, maybe the library in Raynham to go to school. So you got there at 8:30, the bell would ring, you went in, 11:30, you walked home. Your mother was home, she had soup and a sandwich ready for you. You ate it quickly, and you walked back to school, walked back all the way back to school again, another 20 minutes to a half hour, and then at 3 o'clock, you walked home. So you made 4 trips to school, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So maybe they didn't need to have gym class because you got all your exercise walking back and forth to school. So with the buses, because they had neighborhood schools, so they didn't bus the kids across town to go to certain schools. What's this? I'm going to ask you. Anyone guess what this is? Yeah. It is chalk. Yeah, you don't even have chalkboards anymore.
Is that for music class for making the line?
Good for you. Wow. Good for you. You're a smart kid. Right. If this was a blackboard, you would do this and you would draw the lines across, and the music teacher or your teacher would have 5 lines, because what? The staff has 5 lines and 4 spaces. So that they would automatically be there. And then if the teacher was teaching penmanship, she could take out these 2, and then she would have wider lines so she'd write straight on the board. Because, of course, every afternoon you had penmanship, and you practiced writing penmanship. And you did, you had pen and ink. Pen and ink, there was a hole in the desk. Maybe some of you have those old desks at home that have a hole in it. A wooden desk has a hole in it, and you had a pen and you had to dip it in and write. And the poor left-handed kids, because when they were writing, they would write, and then they would drag their hand through the ink. So they had an awful time writing with the ink because it was wet. And then probably by 5th grade, they had invented the wonderful ballpoint pen. That was a big invention. And it was a big deal to have a ballpoint pen because they weren't the throwaway kind. You had they were called Papermate pens. And when it ran out of ink, you had to go to the store and buy a refill, a little plastic cartridge that was inside. Yes?
Weren't the pens relatively expensive back then?
Yeah, they were. They certainly weren't 20 cents. They were probably $5 or so, which was a lot of money if you were making only $1 an hour. So yes, they were. Yeah, and everybody wrote letters. You didn't really call people up because if you called someone in another town, you had to pay extra. So if you called a relative that lived in Boston, you had to pay a lot of money to call. So you really limited your call to a couple minutes, and you said only what you had to because you paid it. Now you can call anywhere and it's the same amount because we have all those towers that are around. You see those big towers that transmit the cell phone things. So it was very, very different, but I don't want you to think it was terrible because that was the world we were. In fact, my son said to me, you know, Ma, when he was growing up, he said, we had a wonderful childhood because we never locked the doors and kids could play anywhere. He could go into the woods. You always saw kids outside, and there was no real danger. Like, you know, people are always afraid that you're going to be stolen or have bad things happen to you. And I don't know, I'm sure there were nasty people back then too, but you know, it was just a different kind of life because you trusted people, because you needed people. And I know that people had their doors open all the time, but everyone knew there was nothing really valuable inside anyway. So what were they going to steal if they came in? So I want to thank you for being such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful audience. And again, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you. Yes?
So you're saying when you called someone, like today, if you go out of state, back then if you wanted to call someone from California, like would that be more than just to Boston?
Yes, it would be. A lot more. It would be that would be a big major event in your life because and then on your phone bill, you'd get listed where you called and how many minutes you called, and you'd be charged more. So it was a big deal to call out of your area. You know, so you're so lucky now to stay in contact with your grandparents and, you know, friends that you have that live far away, because we didn't have that luxury. You know, you wrote letters, like I said. Everybody wrote, which is gone out of style now. People email and text and everything else, and they don't know how to write a letter. They don't know how to talk to one another face to face. Yep.
I still write letters.
Excuse me?
I still write letters. Yeah.
You do? Good for you.
So do I.
Good for you.
Grandparents in New Hampshire.
Terrific. I'm glad you do that. And you know what? I can.
They don't like the phone idea. They're like, they have one, but they don't like.
Yep.
They like either in person or by letter.
They like you to write.
Because you could get, when I might say something, it could mix up to them. And
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
phone might.
Exactly. And you know what? I bet you that if you go to your grandparents' house, they've saved your letters, because I bet your letters are very precious to them. So that's a wonderful thing that you're communicating and writing to them. Yeah. Yeah. So if you have someone you write to, keep a letter or two, because they'll be special in years to come. The things you don't think are valuable now, you wish you had when you get older. Especially friendships. Like I said before, if you're friends with someone, you make sure you keep that friendship for a long, long time, because that's the most valuable thing you have. So I want to thank you again, and have a wonderful time. And have a good Memorial Day. To me, would have been tomorrow, because the Monday holidays, everybody had real holidays on holidays of the date it was. So Memorial Day is really tomorrow, not a Monday. Yep.
I have one more question. How expensive were, like, motels and hotels?
How expensive or what? I can't hear you.
Like, hotels?
Oh, hotels. I really don't know, because it would have been something that my parents would have paid for, not me, when I was growing up. And I can't remember staying in hotels. We didn't, as I said, we'd had one car, and what we would do, we would rent a cottage down the Cape for a week. Or you could rent it by the week. But as far as staying in motels, we really didn't do that. We just didn't have the money to do it. Yep. Any other questions? No? Yep.
So, like, like you were saying, how your son used to say, like, how you guys didn't have to lock the doors or anything like that. My grandparents, like, when they were little, they tell me all about how they could just go outside, come back at 9 at night, and then just leave the door unlocked.
That's right.
They think it's so different now, because it's like we can't trust the neighbors.
That's right. That's right.
If we were able to do it back then, why can't we do it today? That's my grandparents, like, and now everyone I know, even me, has like alarms and everything.
Exactly.
You should
Exactly.
trust the people you're.
Yes. Yes. That's right. You depended a lot on your neighbors, because your neighbors took care of you and you took care of your neighbors. It was you. You're right. You would trusted everybody, and now you're not so sure. So. It isn't only your neighbors. People drive into your neighborhood. So, yep, it's right. That's right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.